Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Sunday's coming up, guys. Giants versus Falcons. Eli Manning's jersey retirement game. Really excited about it. Anthony and I will be there at the game. So if you're in the parking lot tailgating and whatnot, let us know where you are, what lot you're in. We'll come say hi, have a drink, have a beer. Get ready for this game. I know they have some bobbleheads. Kind of ridiculous. They only have 25,000 bobbleheads, considering maybe that's like a fourth of the actual amount of people attending this game. So I think you have to be in the stadium by like 11 to even have a chance to get one, which is kind of crazy. I'm trying to have enough beers before 1 that I can enjoy this game, even if we lose, or at least get really rowdy if we lose. So it's going to be really fun. We're excited to meet some of you guys, hopefully in the stadium there. A couple people have already hit me up saying, come through our lot. We're going to be walking around doing some fun stuff there. So excited about that. But today we want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Their defense. What have they done the first 2 weeks of this season? Nothing much. They've been really, really freaking bad. I have a couple of talking points I want to discuss with you guys. A couple of things the Giants are probably looking at, saying this is where we can take advantage of this team specifically. And we want to talk about how Kenny Golladay could have his breakout game, in week 3 of this season. And, Daniel Jones could really use him to really step it up, get some more separation, and really why the wide receivers aren't getting that much separation to begin with. I've been, watching a lot of stuff here and there. I know if you guys watch the Kurt Warner breakdown, it really gives you a good idea of why these receivers aren't getting a lot of separation and really what's wrong with the scheme and things that Daniel Jones can do better, which I do want to discuss as well. Before we dive into all this good stuff, Anthony, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really good, man. I am so excited for this Sunday. I'm excited to meet as many of you as we possibly can. We're going to be in that parking lot for probably hours, just going around meeting people and trying to get some pictures with you guys, connect with the Giants fans that really make this podcast possible, make it so enjoyable for us. So super excited for that. Of course, I'm excited to see Eli Manning get his jersey inducted into the Ring of Honor, get his jersey retired. Eli Manning being my favorite athlete of all time in any sport. I love Eli. I really look at him as a second father figure in my life growing up. He was a complete role model, so I'm happy that I'm going to be able to attend the game where he gets honored by the fan base that loves him so much and that he loves equally. So it's going to be an awesome Sunday. Hopefully the Giants can win and make that a really great, perfect Sunday, because if they lose that game, specifically the Eli Manning game, this fan base is going to have a riot. It is going to be terrible. It's going to be a horrible, scary time to be a Giants fan. We're going to be burning down MetLife. We're going to be ripping the seats out of the stadium and just throwing them onto the field, throwing cans,
Jets fans
throwing
won't
garbage. Yeah, Jets fans don't care because they're just as pissed at their team after 2 weeks as we are. So, yeah, man, they got to win on Sunday. They got to commemorate Eli Manning's legacy with a win during his jersey retirement. It's very important to me. It's very important to probably everybody listening, important to all Giants fans. Not only important that the Giants win, but that they win this game specifically. You can't let Eli down. Never let Eli down. But anyway, I'm excited to talk about the topics that we have and preview this game coming up on Sunday. It's going to be a good one. I do think it's going to be close, but if there's ever going to be a game where the Giants get caught in a shootout, 45-43 score, something like that, this could be the one. Falcons, terrible defense. Giants, through 2 weeks, terrible defense. Giants offense last week started to pick it up. And so maybe we can get going for real against this terrible Falcons pass defense. But, of course, you got to keep in mind the Falcons offense has kind of been sleeping. They're a little dormant. They're bound to wake up soon enough. They could wake up this week. We're having this discussion about why this could be the week that Kenny Golladay breaks out or the Giants offense breaks out. They're having the exact same discussion over in Atlanta. I can promise you that. They're saying this is Calvin Ridley's week to return to form. This is Mike Davis running on. Matt Ryan's a good quarterback, guys. Like, this is going to be a tough game. But yes, I'm excited to preview it. I do think that this will be the moment that the Giants offense starts to turn around, break free, and hopefully Kenny Golladay can have a really solid performance and we can go through with a win on Eli Day and feel a lot better about this season going forward.
Yeah, if you happen to stumble into Eli Manning, I just picture you going like, "Dad, is that you?" And Eli being, "Who the hell are you?" And be like, he's like, "Nah, you're not mine. You're not mine." That father figure, I kind of feel you with that. I'm growing up and seeing him and the way he presented himself, the way he led by example, definitely has some characteristics that you want to embody as a kid.
Absolutely. And not to spoil too much, but we might be in a situation soon enough where that might happen. So I'm going to have to make sure I don't call him dad when we get to that situation. But I don't want to spoil anything, make any false promises. But hint, hint, wink, wink to our Fireside Giants viewers.
Well, hopefully we can do that. That would be insane. But nonetheless, we don't want a Trojan horse type of scenario when it comes to the Giants, right? We don't want them to lose this game and we're sending in a fake hog molly to tear it down from the inside. And I think, for the most part, the Giants are in a weird spot. They actually had a practice squad offensive tackle and Jake Burton get signed from the Raiders yesterday, which is really weird. Why would anyone want a Giants offensive lineman? Curious, maybe they should have given an opportunity at tackle. Who knows? At right tackle, maybe that was something they missed on. Maybe a mistake on their part. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, Nate Solder is the guy right now. But this Falcons defense, my friends, is one that is vulnerable, man. They are the worst defense in the league through 2 weeks. They've allowed 40 points on average per game, including 48 to Tampa Bay last week. 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns they allowed to Tom Brady, 2 of which were to Gronkowski and 2 of them to Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin might have had one too. So when you're looking at this defense, their secondary is a mess. Their linebackers are bad. Deion Jones, their starting middle linebacker, has allowed 119 yards and 2 touchdowns through 2 weeks. He is vulnerable, man. He is a liability in coverage. Attack him with your tight ends, specifically Evan Ingram. That's where, if he can play this week, will be big. He started off with trainers today, but they're saying they're lukewarm on the idea of him actually suiting up this week and making his first start of the regular season. So, this team has the ability. Their cornerbacks, not very good. They have Fabian Moreau, who has allowed 2 touchdowns through 2 weeks as well. You have good receivers. Sterling Shepard of the slot. He's going to be able to destroy guys like Isaiah Wilson. And there's a lot of guys that, that Atlanta has that just simply can't match up. I was watching the highlights and some film from the Tom Brady, his game against the Falcons, and he had a ton of time in the pocket. He was sitting there throwing them. They were really exposing the middle of the field and crossing routes to the corner, right? They were using slot crossers to the opposite corner, which is what Kurt Warner said he would prefer to see some of those schemes that Jason Garrett dialed up. Instead of running straight 9 vertical routes from the slot, run corner routes to the opposite side of the field. There's a lot of space that the Giants aren't using, and that was something that really stood out to me, that there was a lot of space that Jason Garrett avoids. He has a lot of receivers really close to each other. The routes are taking too long to develop. Use those crossers, get them into space, drag those safeties out of coverage, and attack where you have space. And I think the Giants need to do a better job of that. But he also had some good points in terms of Daniel Jones and what he did wrong. And Daniel Jones has a couple of weaknesses, right? The first one being he has too much zip on his passes at times. And Anthony, did you notice anything of that when you're looking at Daniel Jones and really the way that he throws the ball, maybe to Kenny Golladay or that drop to Darius Slayton? He's got to put some more air behind some of his passes, especially on cover 0. There was a couple of scenarios where Washington ran cover 0 and they blitzed all out, and all he had to do was just throw it up. We saw Derek Carr do it against Baltimore. All he had to do was just throw it up in the air, give him some actual margin for success instead of just throwing laser beams and letting the cornerbacks undercut. Give your receivers a chance. You don't always have to be fitting them into tight windows. You can throw them open. Is that something you want to see more of Daniel Jones? Do you think that he will adjust to that as the RPOs develop and maybe he recognizes coverages more? But at the same time, cover 0 is pre-snap coverage. Usually you can see that pre-snap. So maybe he just really isn't, understanding of how to get the ball to his receivers in the best way yet.
Yeah, and in terms of the velocity thing with Daniel Jones, I do think that's an important discussion to have because we can probably, off the top of our heads, think of more than one play where we've seen him kind of use the wrong passing type. Think about it in Madden, right? In Madden, you can hold the button down to do a bullet pass, you can tap the button to do a lob pass, and then you can soft tap it to do a touch pass. And touch passing is a major part of elite NFL players, right? Elite NFL quarterbacks have really nice touch passes. This is something that Russell Wilson has perfected, the touch pass. And, when you're scouting college prospects, if you go online and you do research, what is the scouting rubric for NFL quarterbacks? Touch passing is very important because those passes they require an extreme amount of accuracy, and they do, if you are good at throwing touch passes, they put your receiver in the best position to succeed and make the reception. And with Daniel Jones, I'm not seeing that many good touch passes. The dude can sling it. He puts it into tight windows. He can throw it really fast, and he could throw it really accurately when slinging it in that fashion. But the touch passes aren't necessarily there. I do remember a couple throughout his career so far that he's made. I remember in the snow to Sterling Shepard against Green Bay in the back left corner of the end zone. That was a nice touch pass. He was kind of fading, touched it up in the air, and it dropped down in the perfect spot. So there's the ability to do it. But then I think of a play like to Kenny Golladay in week 2 of this year. Down the seam, right? Kenny Golladay, they finally have the single high look that they wanted, cover 1 man, and they're trying to get Kenny Golladay on this little slot fade. And Kenny Golladay runs the slot fade, and he seems to have a step on the defender. but Daniel Jones kind of just zips it in there over his head and tries to put it in the basket right in front of him over his head, but it just kind of bounces off his hand. He only is able to get one hand on it. Now, that's the perfect opportunity to try and throw a touch pass. You can lead him upfield, lead him maybe towards the sideline, put it somewhere to where he has some more time to adjust to the football. Or Daniel Jones could have even zipped it in the way that he did, but thrown it behind Kenny Golladay, so it was more of a back shoulder rather than an over the shoulder. So the little nuance of those plays, it says a couple of things to me. One, yes, it is something that Daniel Jones needs to work on in terms of the velocity that he puts on each and every pass. He needs to be a little bit more selective with that. But it also says another thing. Kenny Golladay and Daniel Jones just are not on the same page yet. They did not practice at all together throughout the training camp process. Kenny Golladay was dealing with that hamstring injury nearly all of training camp. And that obviously had an impact on his ability to gel with Daniel Jones. And so far in the regular season through 2 weeks, these guys are not on the same page. They're not gelled, and Daniel Jones is not putting the ball exactly where Kenny Golladay wants it. So this is something that they have to work on, but those live reps, like the one that we saw where Kenny Golladay wasn't able to haul it in because the pass wasn't where he wanted it, that's important. You learn from those mistakes and those failures. So that throw didn't get completed. Next time, I want to bet money that it does get completed. The next deep shot to Kenny Golladay is going to be a catch because they took that play and learned from it. They said, okay, that's not where Kenny Golladay likes his ball. He's not like Sterling Shepard in that way because Sterling Shepard kind of likes those bullets to go in there. He kind of likes a little more touch on it, maybe a little more, loftiness to this pass. So next time I throw this 9 route to Kenny Golladay, I'm going to put a little more loftiness on him. I'm going to make it a touch pass and let him go get under it and adjust to it. And then they're going to complete it. Those live reps are important because now they get to learn that. They get to take it back to the drawing board and they get to apply it next week on Sunday's game. So that's important there. But then with Daniel Jones, we're just talking generally about his velocity. If you want to go look at the Darius Slayton play. Now, I know a lot of people said originally Daniel Jones whipped it in there because he did throw kind of a bullet pass on that. That's a play where, like Alex was mentioning, if you watched week 1 Monday Night Football, Derek Carr kind of just threw the ball up in the air and let his receiver go get under it for the game-winning touchdown. He knew that the coverage was busted, so he just put it up there and let him go get it. Daniel Jones knew that coverage was busted. A lot of people said there's no way he could have known that the coverage was busted that severely. Yes, he could have. Go watch my film breakdown on it. He knew pre-snap that coverage was broken. The Giants had the perfect play dialed up. They were running the Mills concept on the right side. It was going to take away both quarter coverages from the safety and the cornerback. He knew that there was going to be no one in that end zone. All he had to do was just lob it up to the end zone. But instead, he tries to hit Darius Slayton in stride, makes it a tough catch for Darius Slayton. No excuses. Slayton should have caught that ball, but Daniel Jones could have given him a much easier reception by just throwing a touch pass, just lobbing it up into the middle of the end zone and letting him get under it. So it is this thing where you have to be a little bit more selective if you're Daniel Jones and a little bit more careful with when you're putting zip on it, when you're putting air underneath it. That was a play where he should have put air underneath it. He put the ball in the perfect spot regardless, and it was dropped, but it wouldn't have been dropped if he put more air underneath it. So there's blame to go around. The majority of the blame should be on Slayton for that play, but looking at Daniel Jones as a whole, he does need to be a little bit more careful with how much zip or how much air he puts underneath his passes. And then also leading into the Kenny Golladay discussion that we'll have next, those two have not been on the same page for the first 2 weeks, but those mistakes that we saw in weeks 1 and 2 are going to lead to them being on the same page in week 3, should lead to the Kenny Golladay breakout game, and really should lead to some great chemistry between those two players because their playing styles are perfect for each other. We just got to get them on the same page and get them to start playing some good football.
Yeah, and I think that what Daniel Jones lacks as a passer is that touch. You know what I mean? He lacks that touch to be able to put it and loft it into that space at times. I think he really likes to throw laser beams. He likes to throw them on a rope, which is not a bad thing because when you're a quarterback and you don't have much time and your receivers, your route concepts are all based on timing. You don't loft balls there because it allows guys to undercut them and allows guys to adjust accordingly and maybe have more time. When you're running a timing-based offense, which Jason Garrett really likes to do, you have to throw direct balls that really are at the right place at the right time, and they're coming in hard. They're coming in fast. Why do you think Evan Ingram drops like half the passes going his way? Because Daniel Jones throws absolute freaking fastballs at him like he's Garrett Cole. So I don't really understand, all the time why they make him throw that ball. Maybe that's just his style and they're adjusting and adapting to his style. But I think that Daniel Jones, for the most part, should try and add an element to his game where he throws a little bit more lofty. Anthony, do you think that's something that he should try and add?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I was trying to get at. I think he needs some more touch on his passes. Like I said, there's a couple plays that I can think of where he did have good touch, but generally, and a lot of it probably does have to do with the timing based route concepts that you're mentioning, Alex. Generally, he is whipping balls into coverage or he's whipping balls to open men. He's really just not touching them. It's not touch passes. He's not, I almost just almost had a pause moment, but I didn't. But he's not putting as much air under these passes as he needs to sometimes. And again, I agree. It's probably because of the timing based route concepts, but it is something that he needs to work on. This is his third season. This is the pivotal turning point of his career. He has to, week 2 was a step in the right direction, a huge step in the right direction. He looked like an elite quarterback in week 2. I think most of us agree with that. I think even all of the top analysts that hate Daniel Jones even said he looked kind of elite in that game, right? And he did have some passes with some touch, but most of them, for the majority, if you go watch every single throw from that game, pretty much all of them were timing based routes, and he was winging them into coverage, or winging them to the man. So he wasn't really putting much air under them. So yes, it is something that he should work on. I do remember coming out of college because I did a little scouting back then. I'm much better at it now than I was back then, but in preparation for work with Empire Sports Media, I did do some scouting on Jones. Touch passes were not necessarily his forte. Kyler Murray was another one in that class, went number 1 overall in that class. He was phenomenal at touch passes. We're still seeing that in the NFL. It translated, but Daniel Jones has never really had that in his bag, and it's still something that he's continuing to work on in year 3. So hopefully he can really improve on that by year's end, because touch passes, like I said, if you want to be an elite deep ball thrower, which Jones is, but if you want to be an elite deep ball thrower and really a deep ball or an elite passer in every phase of the game, you got to work on those touch passes.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I think that he's capable of doing it. And also at the same time, there are a couple throws that Kurt Warner points out that he leaves yards on the field, right? He threw a ball behind Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard had about 15 yards ahead of him with nobody there, absolutely nobody there. And he throws the ball behind Sterling Shepard, and Shepard has to go down to the ground and control it. If he hits him in stride there, he might go to the house. He might take this inside the red zone. There are yards that Daniel Jones leaves on the field. That one in the red zone on that slant route, if he throws this outside, he uses a lot of the power from his back foot unnecessarily, and it puts a lot more zip on it, and he's off balance when he throws.
Good point.
Two out of a base. There are throws that Daniel Jones missed last game. So yes, he had a great performance. He looked good. Every quarterback misses throws. You can't be perfect all the time unless you're Tom Brady. But in terms of fundamentals, that is. But Daniel Jones has some things that he needs to work on, putting some more touch on his passes, putting some more air when you're going downfield, or if there's a busted coverage. If you get the right look, you got to connect on those. If you're an NFL team, you get a busted coverage, you have a guy not within 30 yards of anybody, you got to hit that pass 100% of the time. There's no excuses. And of course, Darius Slayton's to blame as well. But I think for the most part, this Falcons defense offers the Giants an opportunity to correct a lot of their weaknesses and put a lot of the past mistakes behind them. We're talking about a team, like I said, is allowing 40 points on average through 2 weeks. This is a defense that is awful. This is a defense, mind you, that the Falcons had 33 minutes of possession. They had 6 minutes more of possession than Tampa Bay did, and they still gave up 48 points. I know 2 of those were pick sixes. So let's say 35 points. They still give up 34, 35 points, despite having actually all the possession. When you have more possession, give up 48 points, and your offense only scores 25, that's bad, man. Like, the Falcons are a bad football team. And the Giants, I'm not going to sit here and say the Giants are going to beat them, because I'm not going down that road again. I refuse to make any comments that says the Giants will beat anybody anymore. But I will say that the Falcons are equally, if not worse, than the Giants. And, this is for probably a trap game. And I will say that this is a defense that they can easily beat. They're in the bottom half of the league, the bottom quarter of the league in rushing yards allowed per game. I think they allow about 127 rushing yards through 2 weeks. So Saquon Barkley, this is an opportunity to get a couple big runs, establish that offensive line, run the football, maintain possession, and really grind out these touchdowns and these scores. Kenny Golladay, these are cornerbacks that are not good. Some of them are inexperienced. Some of them are just flat out bad. Attack those. Run those crosses across from the slot if you have Kenny Golladay inside. Sterling Shepard, I might start both Kenny and Shepard in my fantasy team this week. I think that Shepard's already, he's the 11th ranked receiver in fantasy football right now, so he's already a beast. I'm starting him anyway. But Kenny, I think this is the game where the Giants say, let's get his momentum going. Let's get him some reps. He was already angry at Jason Garrett last week for not getting him involved enough. I think this is where we're going to see him take a couple shots downfield, expose them in coverage. I know that Tampa Bay doing it is a little different because they're really good at scheming guys open. They're really good with developing concepts, and Tom Brady has a lot of leeway and flexibility to attack. But I think the Giants have plenty of options here. They have the talent. And now I do want to talk about one thing, but first, I want to just say shout out to our sponsor, BetQL. You need to go download BetQL right now, the only app you need to make smart bets. Their best bet computer model scans over 350K unique bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports and gives you the reasoning behind why you should place the bet. Their model covers everything from spreads, over and unders, and player prop bets. Don't want to use the model and prefer to do your research yourself? BetQL has all the necessary tools for your research needs. Like I said, they got injury reports, they got videos, they got all the stuff, all the info, all the data that you need to really look at these bets and say, okay, this one is going to slay this week. This one's going to do well. Baseball, I've been absolutely killing it. I don't think I've lost a baseball bet in 2 weeks now. So, go check this out. 5 stars. If they give them 5 stars, they're really doing well. You can head over to the Apple Store or Google Play to download the BetQL app. You can also head to try.betql.co/fireside in the description below on YouTube. Enter the discount code Fireside at payment checkout for 25% of any of their subscription offerings. You can find all this information, again, in the description on YouTube. In week 1, they were absolutely phenomenal for the football bets. BetQL's best bet algorithm went 13-2 on 5-star bets for week 1 NFL games between Thursday and Sunday. Don't miss out on your chance to beat your sportsbook by using all that BetQL has to offer. Go sign up for BetMGM and you get a free year of BetQL. Absolutely phenomenal if you're an eligible state. But I do want to jump over to one last portion of this, Anthony, and it's yards of separation for the receivers. Yards of separation for the receivers is at times a misleading statistics. A lot of people say, oh, like this guy has 1 yard of separation, this guy has 2 yards of separation. A lot of that has to do with the schematics and the route concepts that Jason Garrett is putting on the field. Now, am I saying all of it's bad? No, some of it's good. But when you watch what Kurt Warner has to say and he circles all of the space that's unused on the field, you have to know when you see a certain coverage that you're calling a play that's going to drag safeties out, that you have to drag guys away. No, 2 receivers should never be that close to each other at the end of a route. You know what I mean? That means that there's a ton of space elsewhere on the field that's not being used, and that all of those defenders are now crowding a specific area. Makes it a lot harder for Daniel Jones to throw it, and it doesn't give him enough time. And there's also some stuff that the receivers are doing wrong in terms of, outside releases when they should be inside releasing. If you're running a dagger concept, don't outside release because you're not going to have enough time. Daniel Jones is going to look over there at the first read at that dagger release. He's going to say, oh, that guy's going outside release. The DB has the inside advantage. I'm not throwing that ball. I'm moving on. If you have the inside release and you win inside, suddenly you're a good option. He waits for you to take that dagger. You cut to the inside of the field, and he knows that guy's going to be open. I just got to wait for it. But if you're doing outside releases, which Slayton does on the specific play that I'm thinking about in my head, if you're running this dagger concept and you're running outside release, Daniel Jones is going to look over there and he's going to say that DB has him all the way. He's covered up. He's running. If he's going to cut this inside, there's no way he's going to be open. I'm moving on, and then ends up being a check down for 2 yards, or he gets sacked because he doesn't have enough time. The concepts are taking too long to develop, and the receivers aren't doing him much favors at all. But Anthony, do you think that this yards of separation concept, and that people are talking about, the Giants really don't have any receivers that are above average right now? Do you think this is concept related? Do you think this is just the receivers? Like, what do you think's going on here? Because I think for the most part, I think it's a pretty healthy blend of both, maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely a blend of both. In terms of yards of separation per target or per reception, however Next Gen Stats is, tracking that statistic. It also depends on the coverage type. It does depend on the route. It depends on the down and distance. It really depends on so many different things. There's always confounding variables with almost all of these statistics, right? So when you're talking about a play, let's say where Kenny Golladay is running a 9 route down the sideline, he's not going to get 5 yards of separation. If he gets 1 yard of separation, he did his job. He did it even better than he even needed to, because really, when you're running a 9 route down the sideline, sometimes all you need is a half a yard of separation for the quarterback to throw a perfect pass and get a big play downfield. But if you're talking about a quick slant against man coverage with the cornerback playing outside shade, you should probably get 3 yards of separation on that. You should be able to get open if you're taking a quick slant inside release, and you're just breaking him down off the line of scrimmage. As long as you release well, you should be able to gain a ton of outside or inside leverage and gain some good separation. But let's say he's playing zone coverage. Okay, well, now you're talking about these wide receivers looking for the open portions of zones. And so they have to try and slip in behind linebackers or slip in behind cornerbacks. And then there's really no separation. It's more spatial awareness. We're not talking about receiver separation against zone coverage unless we're talking about, at the catch point. Separation at the catch point is important. But if they're not playing man-to-man coverage, you're not necessarily separating. You're kind of looking for open spots within the zone. Man-to-man, you want to separate from the guy that's on you. When you go into the guy's zone and he takes you maybe in a man-match zone, man-match coverage, then you're talking about separating from that guy. But let's say the deep crossers that you're mentioning, Chris Godwin, when he runs a deep crosser from the slot to the left side of the field against cover 2 and that big hole shot zone, where there's the flat, the hole, and then the deep half, that big hole, if he runs a crosser into that zone, he'll catch the ball and no one will be guarding him. And the next gen stats will probably say he had 7 yards of separation. Well, he didn't separate from anybody. He just ran to the open part of the field. And then he caught the pass because he was in the right spot at the right time because he's an elite wide receiver. So he knows where to go against certain coverages. So that says a lot about his mental makeup and how good of a receiver he is in that regard. But it doesn't necessarily say how good of a route runner he is, how good of a separator he is. But on the statistics, it'll say he had 7 yards of separation on that reception. But that's just not how that works. So that's a lot to keep in mind when you're really breaking down that statistic as a whole and when you're really discussing separation from wide receivers. When we're talking about separation, I'm talking about when I did film breakdowns before the NFL draft in 2020 and I looked at Jerry Jeudy working from the slot. Okay, he has one of the best cornerbacks in the SEC manned up against him, and then he runs a curl route and stops on a dime, and the corner that was in man coverage ends up 7 yards away from him because he tripped and fell. Okay, that's creating separation. That is literally the definition of good route running, creating separation. And maybe I can use some NFL examples. I'm sure I could. And I'm sure I could use some examples from players that are on the Giants as well. Let's talk about Kadarius Toney. We watched him pre-draft, that play against Ole Miss where he ran that whip route. He faked outside, then came right inside. Well, he gained like 6 yards of separation. He toasted that slot cornerback. That slot cornerback could not keep up with him. So that's when you're talking about gaining separation. But when we're talking about a player running down the seam in a cover 3 and then catching a bullet in between this window, again, that's not gaining separation. So that's why it depends on the concept. It depends on the coverage. It depends on the player making the play versus the certain coverage type. And so when you're talking about specific concepts as well, Alex, that you were talking about, in curl flats, it's very hard to gain separation. And the Giants run a lot of curl flats. So the tight end will run to the flat. If that's man coverage, there's literally no separation to gain because he's just running horizontally. So he just has to get open. Like he just has to be lucky, basically. And the guy running the curl literally just has to run forward and then stop on a dime and come back to the ball. You're probably gaining at maximum 2 yards of separation there. But that's all the Giants want because they're not looking to create yards after catch on a play like that. They're looking to make the catch, go down, and secure a first down. And so that's where you get into the nuance of the Giants offense not wanting to create separation and not wanting to create yards after catch. They're really just looking to throw the ball and gain that yardage through the air, which is a problem in and of itself. We talk about this all the time with Jason Garrett. I would love to see him have some more concepts. The Mills concept that he threw in there to beat that cover 6 was a phenomenal concept to add, but there's plenty of other route concepts that he can create to create yards after the catch or create separation at the catch point. But for the most part, Jason Garrett's offense doesn't call for that. It calls for curls. It calls for, really close quarter routes where you're basically making 50-50 receptions 60% of the time. So that statistic can be very misleading when you look at it in a certain way, but it also isn't always an indictment on the wide receiver or tight end or whatever pass catcher you're referring to. A lot of the times, it's actually more of an indictment on the offensive coordinator, his scheme, his route concepts, and the plays that he is calling.
Right. Yep. Very, very good analysis there and really good explanation of kind of what's going on. But guys, this is going to be a game that the Giants must win. We have a really, really tough schedule coming up after this Falcons game. We have the Saints, we got Carolina coming up, we have the Chiefs, we have the Buccaneers, we have the Rams. It's not an easy schedule by the Chargers. This is tough. We got to get some momentum. We got to plaster this Atlanta team. We got to hold them with our defense. We got to really do a good job. And execute all around. No coaching staff mishaps. We have to get more creative, get Kadarius Toney involved, need some big splash plays, need to show that we can target teams downfield and move the football consistently, not just on the first drive, but consistently and avoid a lot of mental errors. If you can avoid the mental errors, if you can axe all those, the Giants can play good football. A lot of their weaknesses are not because they're not talented, it's because they're making mental errors and the coaching staff are making bad decisions. And I think, for example, the Joe Judge where he threw the challenge flag trying to get the ref's attention just to waste a timeout, cannot do that stuff. I know he took a responsibility for that, but it's still something you just can't do as a head coach. So for the most part, they got to eliminate some of these mental errors. They're going to get better, I hope. And this is a great game to really get off to a better start and kind of reset the clock here because we need it. Guys, once again, thank you to our sponsor, BetQL. The only app you'll need to be your sportsbook. Find their information along with the 25% off discount code in the description of this video, and also check out the special BetMGM offer in the description in order to receive a free year of BetQL and other sportsbook sign-up offers and bonuses. But make sure to also subscribe below to Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and let us know if you're going to be at the game, where you're going to be, if you're going to be tailgating. Love to meet up, love to hang out, have a beer with you guys. At this rate, I might be like 20 beers deep. I'm going to be crawling my way to each parking lot tailgate, but that's what we're going to do. We'll have some fun with you guys and enjoy the game. It'll be a really great time. But have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys on the next New York Giants video.